My name is John Passfield. I'm going to read from my novel in a moment. First of all, I'll say that the title of this video is Babe Ruth, Video 6, The Babe and Ty Cobb. The cover, out of the park, there are cogitations of Babe Ruth. Out of the park, the cogitations of Babe Ruth, a novel by John Passfield. A watercolor from a photograph of a very significant image in the mind of the main character by Prashant Miranda, Prashant Miranda, the artist who did the watercolor. Summary on the back, summary of the whole novel, the premise of the whole novel. October 1st, 1932, an aging Babe Ruth stands at the plate in Wrigley Field, Chicago, and grins at the shouts of a raging, hostile crowd. His knees ache, but his focus is still on the ball. He fights off a swarm of thoughts. His first year as a Yankee, his record of 60 home runs, his 2 wives, his money problems, a million questions about when he's going to hang up his glove. He is looking for his next big hit to prove that he still belongs in the game. The pitcher's eyes are burning. The crowd is a frenzied roar. He raises his arm and points at the center field fence. Okay, Babe Ruth represents a new kind of baseball in which a single player can, by hitting a home run with the bases loaded, change the score of a game by 4 runs. Ty Cobb, a player from an earlier era in baseball, represents what is called inside baseball, in which all 9 players on a team advance the score by 1 run at a time, by hitting a single, by stealing a base, or by advancing on a walk. The 2 players, Ruth and Cobb, are strong personalities and clash on the field and in the media of the day. In this reading, I'm going to focus on the Ty Cobb imagery in the mind of the main character, Babe Ruth. Well, let's go into the reading then. I've selected 3 chapters. The first one will be from the 1920 cycle. Let me just find the page here. Oops. Yeah, page 109. Okay, chapter 8, Spring 3. Spring is 1920 for Babe Ruth, his first year as a Yankee. The Polo Grounds, New York, not yet playing in the house that Ruth built. That comes later after he becomes a big star. July 19th, 1920. The action, standing at home plate. Starting out fresh and new, working myself into the groove. Had a lot of success at Boston, but New York is the biggest town in the whole wide world. Figuring out if I can play in the biggest town, in the toughest league, in the greatest game. Calling on everything I got inside me to help me do it. Take my first year as a Yankee, 1 hit at a time. While calling on many things inside him to help him do it, help him become a star, help him hit the next home run even. But also calling on imagery to kind of create his own sense of self. And the Cobb imagery, among 60 images of the chapter, might be, I think there's about 5 Cobb images in this chapter, might be significant, might help him to be the best Babe Ruth, might undermine him, might not help him to be the best Babe Ruth. Let's start out with media questions, not while he's at bat, of course, but before the game. They might have been asked literally. After the game, he can predict pretty well what he's going to be asked. Have you read about any of the comparisons between yourself and Ty Cobb? Asked the reporter. A couple more questions. Is your marital status a fair topic for an interview? Does it bother you to have to be always answering questions? Well, there's a media question, right? You hate answering all these questions? So just one question there about Cobb, but have you read any of the comparisons? So even if it didn't occur to him to be compared with Cobb, it's been kind of forced on him as a topic to at least think about. Even if he rejects it as a valid topic, it's still in his mind, working. And he's trying to hit a home run. Cobb ain't nothing to me. Cobb stole 28 bases last year. We played him in Detroit, and Cobb didn't get 1 hit. How are you going to steal? You can't even get on base. So setting the criteria by which you wish to be judged, using another person within that judgment as a kind of a scale, right? So Cobb steals 28 bases the year before. Let's take the game in Detroit where what did he do? I hit, and Cobb didn't get a hit. He didn't get on base. He didn't steal one base. So let's use that as a comparison. So we select it. We select moments, actual events. We make them imagery. And we make them significant imagery, evaluative imagery, if you like. So here he is reworking the Cobb experience to suit his own sense of the relationship of he and Cobb, the way to evaluate the two people. Let's go to 118 then for another Cobb image. Hard to say the word Cobb without sneering. My early season this year was pretty nearly a washout, but I picked up my socks, playing games against the Tigers, going head-to-head against Cobb, thinking I would like to knock the ball right down his throat, thinking of all the rotten things he's been telling the newspaper guys about how I'm ruining the game with my home run hit, and everybody talking about how Cobb and me was representing the old and the new ways of playing baseball. And me thinking, yeah, I'd like to run old Cobb right out of the game. That's why it was nice to be smacking 2 homers and nice to see old Cobb going hitless. Looked good on him for all that stuff he was spouting off to the newspapers about. Thinking that I was going to enjoy getting lots more hits against Cobb and the Tigers this year. So Babe Ruth is myth building in his mind by selecting certain information about Ty Cobb and himself, the game in which I hit and he didn't even get on base. But so is Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb is talking to the newspapers. Like there's going to be a question. There was in 1920, Babe Ruth's first year as a Yankee, and in 1927 and 1932, Cobb retired during those years. There was going to be a question, who is the greatest baseball player of all time? And Cobb, he's lobbying to place information in the minds of his whole society, the baseball aficionados of his society, that they'll see a significant imagery in their myth of the greatest baseball player of all time. It's kind of fun to look at this, to look at the way serious literature tells us the mind of every human being works, and to look at it in a professional sport, and to see that it's working in the same way, and then to work with these images. I enjoyed writing this novel, but it is serious literature, even though it's about something that some would say is trivial, baseball. Some would say is, hey, pretty darn important. Just trying to pick up on my pages here. 122, we'll go for another Cobb image. Here we are. Okay. Teasing old Huggins on the bench. Huggins is his manager. Saying things I know he don't want to hear. I figure we should all try to bunt. If everybody tries a bunt, we'll be sure to win the game. And then thinking to himself, I can't wait until the next time we play Detroit. The only guy I hate in the whole league is that guy Cobb. He's always trying to get me off my game by the things he says. Out loud to Huggins, the manager. Now don't you fellas be talking about cards and stuff like that. That kind of talk ain't gonna win us the game. Just keep your mind focused on baseball all afternoon. So kind of imitating the manager's repeated admonitions to the players. To himself, I'd like to stuff the game right down Cobb's throat if I get the chance. The perfect game is me getting all the hits and Cobb getting none. I'd like to take it right to Detroit next time we meet him, then see what Cobb says in the newspapers the day after that. And then out loud, is Mr. Comiskey here with the team? I'd like to talk to him after a game if he's here. Maybe he'd like to trade me for Shoeless Joe. Well, the 1919 Black Sox scandal figures in this novel as imagery. This is 1920. It didn't really come to light in 1919. It came to light during the 1920 season, so it's fascinating imagery to see working through this novel, but through the mind of Babe Ruth, What can go wrong with a career, you might say? Teasing old Huggins while he's trying to concentrate on the game. So just as Babe Ruth is concentrating on hitting the ball, and all these images are kind of impinging on his consciousness. Miller Huggins is trying to win the game as manager, and then there's all Babe Ruth's chatter impinging on his consciousness. But thinking of Cobb, even when he's not playing Cobb, is this helping him to be a better baseball player, to be a better human being, or hurting him? Standing in a batter's box and waiting for a pitch that'll give me the chance to explode. Well, that's one chapter from 1920. Let's go to 1927 now. The year he has a chance to hit 60 home runs. He still thinks of Cobb sometimes among 60 images. So, about 5, I guess, of Cobb, 5 or 6. Doing pretty good for myself. Feeling good about being on top. Feeling fit and strong and powerful. Figuring I know who I am and what I've done and what I can do. None of these injuries, aches, and pains ain't gonna stop me. Showing them other hitters what it is to be on top. Okay, then we'll go to 132 for a couple of images about Cobb. Among 60 images in this chapter, 5, 6, 7 about Cobb. All them times I work so hard in my hitting. Watching old Cobb every time he gets up to bat. I don't like him, but I don't mind seeing if I can learn something from his swing. Media questions. Before the game, predictable after the game. Is it hard to shake Lou Gehrig's hand when you two are competing in a home run race? In which of your records do you feel you should take the most pride? Third question. What do you answer when people say that Ty Cobb is a more all-round baseball player than you are? Well, all-round baseball player, like we all expect to be judged. We all judge ourselves, evaluate ourselves. What criteria do we use? It's very common in serious literature for the main character at the end to try to set the criteria by which he will be judged. Hamlet says, report my cause a right to the unsatisfied, right? I'm going to be judged. I want you, Horatio, to set the parameters of that judgment, the standard. Othello, speak of me as I am, nothing extenuating or set down aught in malice. He's lobbying to have his standard be applied to his life by other people. Willie Loman, I am not a dime a dozen. It runs all through serious literature but we do this. Like serious literature is about us, is what I'm saying. All we people, we all sort of search for and decide on and maybe change as we go through life the standard by which we'd like to be judged by others, the standard by which we judge and evaluate ourselves. An accurate standard, a reasonable standard, or a little self-favoritism there? Who knows? Okay, trying not to lose track here. 133, I guess, comes next. That Cobb couldn't pitch a game to save his life. Ty Cobb is the kind of ball player that I despise. Cobb's everything wrong with the way some guys play the game. So Cobb is the all-time base stealer. Well, the newspaper guys is saying that Cobb is over the hill. He can't cover half the ground he did 10 years ago. Somebody ought to tell Cobb that it's time for him to retire. I don't spike guys like Cobb does. That's for sure. So he's the all-time base stealer, says Babe Ruth to himself. But hey, maybe if you spike guys when you run the bases, that gives you the leeway. Cobb knows that. He does it on purpose to steal more bases than you would steal if you were a nicer base runner. And did spike guys. Does that make the second baseman, the shortstop, a little more leery of fielding the ball well to tag you out when they know it's Cobb coming down with his spikes sharpened probably in the dressing room before he even puts them on? Like, how do we evaluate ourselves? How do we evaluate others? What's the criteria? Always searching for that in serious literature. 139, another Cobb image we'll have a look at here. This time print media, commenting on the Ruth-Cobb relationship. So for you and I, not print media commenting on a relationship, but outside parties other than myself and the person I'm having the relationship with, yourself and the person you're having the relationship with. If heaven is truly the promised land, then I expect to find Ty Cobb's angel sitting on a baseball diamond-shaped cloud and explaining to Babe Ruth's angel a lesson that Ruth would never allow himself to listen to while down here on earth. Ruth's angel will suffer great remorse when he realizes that if he had shortened up his swing, he would have had more hits, fewer strikeouts, and a better average. So again, this suggestion of a criteria by which to measure one's value, one's worth. More hits, fewer strikeouts, better average. Is that, would that make Babe Ruth down here on earth feel better about himself? Feel that he was a greater ball player, a better contributor to the game, a happier person in his personal life when he goes home after a ball game, if he got more hits and a better average and so on? Well, we get suggestions from other people, our bosses, our spouses, our friends, as how we could evaluate ourselves a little differently, act a little differently, and think better of ourselves. So they say. 141 here. Fans shouting, "Babe, nobody'll ever break your records. Babe, you should give lessons to Cobb. Babe, this is your greatest season ever." So again, nice to get praise once in a while. Do we take that as the only criterion? Hey, I'll take all the praise in and use that as my self-evaluation standard. Anybody who criticizes me, well, I don't think so. I don't think they really know the real me, Kind of fun to think about imagery and how it works in our minds. 142, last section in this chapter. Standing in a batter's box and knowing that the next one ain't going to get by me no matter what. Well, interesting that Babe Ruth said that after about 1921, he never got a good pitch, and he would sit in the dugout and watch the pitches that other lesser hitters were being thrown and thinking, boy, why don't they throw those pitches to me? So his claim, not without some logic, is that nobody wanted to give Babe Ruth decent pitches. He had to turn terrible pitches, walks really, or balls, I guess we'd say, into home runs. That was his claim. Not only did I hit more homers than anybody else, I hit more homers from bad pitches than anybody else. So this is determination. You think you're going to walk me? You're thinking you're going to throw me a pitch I can't hit? You're going to see that ball sail over the center field fence, he says to himself. So self-image, right? Okay, let's go to 1932. I've selected chapter 13. And here it is, page 193. Okay, chapter 13, autumn, spring for 1920, summer for 1927, autumn for 1932. Getting near the end of his career. So chapter 13, autumn 5, the fifth chapter of that cycle, Wrigley Field, Chicago, October 1st, 1932. The famous game in which he pointed, which is on film, still a controversy from like 1932 to 2021. You can do the math on that, approaching 90 years. People still say, some say, yes, he predicted he would hit the next ball over the center field fence. And he did hit the ball over the center field fence. Others say no. He was saying, give me one good pitch and I'll hit it. So what did Babe Ruth say? Well, he said, hey, read the newspapers, Page 193. Getting a little older. Relying on tape and rub-downs and liniments to get me through. Dragging an old body around and shrugging off all the cat calls. Loving the game so much that I force myself to keep on going. Looking for the next big hit to prove that I'm still in the game. Okay, then we go from 193 to 198, leaving out all images on other topics to go for Cobb-only images for this reading. The media, print media. A player with a major flaw in his repertoire can hardly be considered as the greatest player to ever play the game. Such a baseball expert as the great Ty Cobb was quoted yesterday as saying that he wouldn't want Ruth's strikeout numbers against his name. So Ty Cobb, little conflict of interest here. He's not only retired now, but a rival candidate for best player to ever play the game. But he's also the expert who can give the newspaper, media people, print media people, the criterion by which to judge the best player in the game. And it wouldn't be strikeouts, which, of course, Babe Ruth has a lot more of those than Ty Cobb. 200. Let's move on for more Ty Cobb imagery here in the mind of Babe Ruth. Ty Cobb is a guy I'd probably most like to beat the pants off on a golf course. I'd like to show him a thing or two about the game. How's a guy like him gonna win if he can't go spiking somebody? Be fun to beat him when he's gotta follow the rules. So again, setting up criteria for yourself, setting up criteria for judging others. If they ever meet again on a field, it's going to be on a golf course. Who's he going to spike to win that game? You know, that spiking, cheating, eh? In Babe Ruth's mind. Another one. I hate for Miller Huggins' sister to think I did something on purpose to hurt her brother. I ain't no Cobb. All I did was I just told Huggins I thought he could have done a whole lot better job. Well, another piece of information that nags him throughout this whole novel. And he could have said, oh, it's trivial, I'll just ignore it. Well, his mind at some level could have said that. When Miller Huggins, his first manager, died, Miller Huggins' sister said that she felt her brother lost 5 years of his life simply because he had to be the manager for Babe Ruth, this very difficult superstar prima donna player. And again, we can ignore certain pieces of information that was in the newspaper as trivial, not relevant. But somehow that nags Babe Ruth. So here he is dragging in a Cobb reference and saying, well, I don't hurt people on purpose. I ain't no Cobb. I never hurt Miller Huggins on purpose. Therefore, I hope I'm being judged, and I'll judge myself on that basis. So it's all very interesting, I think. We use imagery to modify imagery, using a Cobb image to somehow modify a Miller Huggins image in his mind. And there it is. Let's go on then to 206 in this chapter. Again, this is a 1932 chapter near the end of his career. Here we are. A couple of images. A media print image first. There's been much talk lately, with the retirement of the great Ty Cobb, about which player is the one who represents the best qualities of baseball. We believe that for a cheerful disposition and continuing rapport with the fans, there's only one choice. Everybody knows that Babe Ruth is the only player who can rightly claim the title of Mr. Baseball. Well, again, the criteria. His best qualities of baseball, cheerful disposition, rapport with fans. Should that be the criteria for judging Babe Ruth, his whole life, his whole career? Ty Cobb, his whole life, his whole career. Ty Cobb was a very fierce individual, but so was Babe Ruth. But I think all these type A people who succeed so well in a field of endeavor, and it doesn't have to be sports, it could be, a concert pianist or something. There's some kind of fierceness in them, determination, focus, and some of them are very smooth on the surface, very kind of media conscious. And I don't think that's necessarily phony. I mean, they treat other people well, and they present themselves, pleasant and cheerful. But like when they start doing what they do, which might be playing a game or walking out on stage to play a concerto or whatever, there's something really determined in that person. So there we are. Fans shouting, Ruth, Cobb's still better than you and he's retired. Ruth, come here and sign your retirement papers. Ruth, you ain't got any more hits left in that bat. So, maybe when a newspaper reporter praises you and a fan puts you down, you have to kind of balance it out, eh? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Okay, last image in that chapter. Bringing the bat around and getting everything I got behind the ball. So, all except the last 3 chapters are Babe Ruth at bat in this novel. 1920 at bat, 1927 at bat, 1932 at bat. But the last 3 chapters, the home run has been hit. He's jogging around the bases, still thinking of all these images. The 1920 home run, the 1927 home run, the 1932 home run. So, in that line, he connects with the ball. Here's the note. You can access my notes for free. I'll tell you how in a minute. The main topic of every item of serious literature is imagery. Imagery is the language by which we human beings think at the deepest levels of our minds. And one of the ways in which we think in imagery is to take the overwhelming complexity of what we know to be true about other human beings and to create a myth of that person, an image pattern of meaning into which to fit not all of the information that we know about that person, but what we consider to be significant information into that mythical image pattern. Now, in the play Othello, for instance, stage 1, Othello begins the play with knowledge of the actual, the real, the very complex Desdemona. Stage 2, Othello ignores much of what he knows and constructs a myth of Desdemona and marries her and carries her away to Cyprus. Stage 3, in the next movement of the play, under the influence that Iago places on the information that Othello already knows about Desdemona and life in Venice, Othello creates a new myth of Desdemona and then proceeds to fit what he considers to be significant information as imagery into that myth. The championing of the disgraced Cassio, the loss of the magic handkerchief, and so on. Things he already knows now have different significance in a different myth. Stage 4. After he has killed Desdemona, Othello realizes that he has moved from a valid myth of Desdemona to a false myth of Desdemona. In his processing of the information about the actual real Desdemona into imagery. Story of the play Othello. Story of all serious literature, all serious tragedy anyway. In contrast, can we say that Desdemona never changes her Othello myth from first to last as she moves through the events of her lives together? Likewise, Hamlet. He has known both his father and his mother as actual, complex, living human beings. Does Hamlet's myth of his father change during the play? Does his myth of his mother change during the play? In classical tragedy, the making of false myths is detrimental to the main character. In this novel, Babe Ruth interacts over the years with the real, actual, historical Ty Cobb. He, Babe Ruth, reduces the complexity of the information about Ty Cobb to a myth into which he can fit selected items of information as imagery. So, does Babe Ruth change his Ty Cobb myth over the years? Does the making of Ty Cobb into a myth, or myths plural, help or hurt Babe Ruth as he processes the imagery of his own life as a means of living that life as best he can? And as a tag, does Ty Cobb in this novel construct a myth of Babe Ruth? And is that image processing exercise to Ty Cobb's benefit or to his detriment? Well, you'd have to read the novel, I guess, to try to answer these questions. So let me just say that it is for sale. Out of the Park, The Cogitations of Babe Ruth, a novel by John Passfield. It's on Amazon, and you can see it there and purchase it if you wish. But there's also 2 free books that I have written, a notebook and a planning notebook with lots of information and thoughts about the novel. So if you go to my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca, click at the top, notebook, journal, go down to the icon in each case. The notebook, lots of thoughts about not only Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, and all the rest of it, but the imagery and how it works in literature. It works in serious literature because it works that way in our minds. Serious literature is always about us, about everyday people, all people who ever have lived and will live. That's just the way it is. So those books are free, and if you're interested, have a look, and I think you might find them, to be interesting and valuable if you're the kind of person who enjoys this kind of thinking. So lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.